Picture this. It's a Tuesday morning in Victorian England, and you're about to leave for a simple walk to the lending library. But first, you must pass an invisible exam. Gloves? Check. Hat secured at precisely the right angle? Check. Parasol held in the correct hand? Check. Because in this world, there were no small outings, only public performances where every gesture was graded by unseen judges. Chapter 1. The Morning Ritual. Dressing as Defense. You wake before dawn. The bedroom is cold enough that you can see your breath. Frost creeps across the window glass in delicate patterns, and somewhere downstairs a maid is already stoking the kitchen fire. But you can't go down yet. Not like this. Because in Victorian England, getting dressed isn't just about fashion, it's about armor. Your maid enters quietly, carrying an armful of fabric. She doesn't speak. Neither do you. There's a rhythm to this ritual that requires no words. First comes the chemise, thin cotton that reaches your knees. Then the drawers, split at the crotch for practical reasons, but the very word drawers is something you'd never say aloud in polite company. In some circles, women called them unmentionables because even acknowledging their existence felt improper. Next, the corset. Your maid pulls the laces tight. You grip the bedpost and exhale slowly. The pressure around your ribs is familiar now, almost comforting in its constancy. Some women lace so tightly they've fainted during afternoon tea. Others have broken ribs. You've heard whispers of women who sleep in their corsets, afraid that loosening them even once might reveal the body's true, unacceptable shape. But you breathe, shallowly, carefully. The corset isn't just shaping your waist, it's holding your entire posture hostage. You can't slouch in this. You can't bend freely. You can't even take a full breath. And that's the point. Now comes the cage crinoline, a marvel of engineering made from steel hoops and horsehair. It creates the fashionable bell shape that makes doorways a strategic challenge. You've seen women trapped in burning buildings because their skirts were too wide to fit through escape routes. You've heard of others knocked off balance by strong winds, their skirts acting like sails. But without it, you'd be improperly dressed, unfinished, inappropriate. 3 petticoats layer on top of the crinoline. Each one is heavy with fabric and trim. By the time you're done, you're wearing roughly 15 pounds of undergarments alone. And here's the strange part. Every single layer has moral significance. The color of your petticoat matters, even though no one will see it. White or cream suggests purity. Pale blue is acceptable for young women. But red? Scarlet? That's the color of actresses and women of questionable reputation. Some etiquette guides advised women to check their undergarments in private, ensuring nothing bright or bold was hidden beneath respectable outer layers. Because somehow, even the clothing touching your skin in complete privacy was subject to judgment. Your bodice comes next, buttoned up the back with tiny fabric-covered fasteners. You need help with this. Independence in this world is a luxury reserved for the lower classes. Finally, the overskirt. Heavy wool today because it's November and the house is never quite warm enough. The hem is precisely measured, long enough to hide your boots entirely, but not so long that it drags through mud and reveals you can't afford a maid to carry your train. You glance at the clock. Nearly 2 hours have passed. 2 hours to become presentable. To construct the version of yourself that's allowed to exist outside this room. Your maid adjusts your collar one final time. You look in the mirror and see the finished product. A lady. But beneath all these layers, you're still you. Still breathing shallowly. Still aware that every seam, every ribbon, every hidden stitch is a rule you're following. And you haven't even left the bedroom yet. Wait until you see what happens when you step into the hallway. Chapter 2. The Art of Walking. Every step is theater. You descend the stairs slowly. Each step is calculated. Your hand rests lightly on the banister. One misstep, one caught heel, one too quick movement, and your skirts might lift. And if your skirts lift, even for a second, someone might see your ankle. In Victorian society, ankles were considered dangerously intimate. Yes, ankles. Not shoulders, not décolletage, not even your forearms. A glimpse of the curved bone above your boot could inspire scandal, provoke gossip, and call your moral character into question. So you move like water, smooth, controlled, deliberate. You reach the front door and pause. Outside, the street is waking. A milk cart rattles past. A chimney sweep calls out his services. Men stride purposefully toward their offices and shops. Boys sprint after rolling hoops. But you will glide. The moment you step onto the pavement, you've entered a stage. Every neighbor, every passing stranger, every servant peering from a window, they're all your audience. And they're all watching for mistakes. Walk too fast, and you'll be seen as frantic, unladylike, possibly desperate. In many etiquette manuals of the era, women were explicitly warned against hurrying in public. Running was compared to animals fleeing danger. Instinctive, yes, but entirely inappropriate for a lady. Some guides suggested that if you absolutely must cross a street quickly to avoid a carriage, you should gather your skirts inward and move with swift dignity, rather than breaking into an actual run. The distinction was important. Speed implied urgency, and urgency implied lack of control. You keep your pace measured, leisurely, as if you have nowhere in particular to be, even if you're late, even if the dressmaker's appointment is in 10 minutes, because appearing rushed is worse than being late. Your skirts brush the pavement as you walk. You're hyper-aware of every gust of wind. A sudden breeze could undo everything. Some women sewed lead weights into their hems just to keep fabric grounded. Others wore ankle-length bloomers beneath their skirts, not for warmth, but as a decoy, a false layer of modesty in case the outer skirt betrayed them. You pass a girl, maybe 16, laughing as she hurries across the lane. Her skirts are hitched up just slightly to avoid a puddle, and for a brief moment, her stockinged ankle is visible. An older woman beside you clicks her tongue softly. You say nothing, but you understand the message. That girl is being careless, reckless. And in this world, carelessness is a moral failing. You think about your own body beneath all this fabric. Your legs are moving, of course. Walking requires them, but no one is supposed to acknowledge that. The illusion must be that you float, that you exist from the waist up only. Everything below is a mystery, a secret, something best left unspoken and unseen. You adjust your parasol, angling it precisely. Not for shade, the sky is overcast, but because carrying a parasol completes the picture of a respectable woman taking the air. Even your accessories tell stories. A closed parasol means you're walking with purpose. An open one suggests leisure. The color matters too. Bright colors suggest youth or frivolity. Neutral tones suggest maturity and restraint. You're only 23, but you carry a dove gray parasol. Better to seem older and respectable than young and reckless. Ahead, the baker's wife stands in her doorway. You nod politely as you pass. Not too low, that would suggest subservience. Not too casual, that would suggest overfamiliarity. Just a slight inclination of your head. Neutral, measured. She returns the nod with equal precision. This is how women communicate in public, through gestures so small they're nearly invisible, yet packed with meaning. Your boots pinch. They always do. They're buttoned so tightly that your circulation slows, but loose boots suggest poor fit, and poor fit suggests financial strain or lack of attention to detail. So you endure. Every woman you know endures something similar. Aching feet, shallow breaths, the constant weight of fabric pulling at your shoulders. But none of you speak of it. To mention discomfort would be to admit that your body has needs. And a lady's body, in theory,
barely exists at all. 3 blocks down, you see a man approaching. Now comes the next test. Will he acknowledge you? Should you acknowledge him? The rules are about to get even stranger. Chapter 3. Street Recognition. The nod that could ruin you. The man is closer now. You recognize him vaguely, perhaps a friend of your brother's, or someone you were introduced to at a garden party last summer. He tips his hat. You have exactly 2 seconds to decide how to respond. Because in Victorian society, public greetings
were an intricate dance with very specific steps, and one wrong move could mark you as forward, inappropriate, or worse. Here's the rule. A lady must never greet a gentleman first, even if you know him, even if you've met him a dozen times, even if he's standing directly in front of you. You must wait for him to acknowledge you, and only then may you respond. This rule was repeated in countless etiquette manuals of the period. The logic was simple. A woman who greeted men freely was suggesting familiarity, and familiarity, unless carefully sanctioned by formal introduction and chaperonage, suggested intimacy. So you wait. He tips his hat. Good. He's acknowledged you first. Now you may nod. Just slightly. A small inclination of your head, paired with the faintest smile. Not too warm, that would suggest flirtation. Not too cold, that would suggest rudeness. Your expression must broadcast polite neutrality. He murmurs, "Good morning," and you reply in kind. Your voice is soft, modulated. You don't stop walking. Neither does he. The entire interaction lasts perhaps 3 seconds. But those 3 seconds were governed by at least a dozen unspoken rules. And you passed. But what if he hadn't tipped his hat first? Then you would have been required to walk past him as though he didn't exist, even if he stared directly at you, even if the silence felt unbearably awkward. Because acknowledging a man who hasn't acknowledged you first could be interpreted as seeking his attention, and seeking attention was the first step toward ruin. You remember a story your aunt told you. A young woman, new to society, had smiled at a gentleman she'd been introduced to the previous week. She thought she was being polite, friendly, but he hadn't nodded first. And her smile, unsolicited, was noticed by others on the street. Within days, rumors circulated that she was over-eager. Her mother had to write letters clarifying that the girl was simply naive, not improper. But the damage lingered. Invitations slowed. Her engagement prospects dimmed. All because of a smile. You think about how careful you must be with every glance, every gesture, every micro-expression. Your face has become a mask you adjust constantly. Ahead, a group of gentlemen are conversing near the corner. You'll need to pass them. This requires strategy. Do you look down at the pavement? That's safest, but it might seem timid. Do you look straight ahead, past them? That shows confidence, but too much confidence is unwomanly. You settle on looking slightly to the side, as though admiring a shopfront window. Your gaze drifts over their group without landing on any individual face. This is the art you've perfected. Seeing without being seen, seeing. One of the men glances your way. You don't react. Your expression remains pleasantly neutral, your pace unchanged. You pass them smoothly, and you hear no comments, no laughter. Another successful navigation. But the effort is exhausting. Every public outing is. Like this. A series of tiny calculations, split-second decisions, performed while appearing utterly effortless. Because if anyone suspects you're trying this hard, that's almost as bad as breaking the rules themselves. A lady must seem naturally modest, naturally graceful, naturally restrained. The performance must be invisible. You're nearly at the dressmaker's shop now, but before you enter, there's one more ritual to complete. You pause at the door and glance down at your gloves. They're still perfectly buttoned. Good, because taking them off at the wrong moment could send entirely the wrong message. Chapter 4. The Glove Dilemma. when removing protection became intimacy. You step inside the shop. The air is warmer here, scented with lavender sachets and fresh fabric. A bell chimes softly overhead, announcing your arrival. The shopkeeper's assistant greets you with a curtsy. Your hands are already beginning to sweat inside the kid leather gloves, but you don't remove them. Not yet. Because gloves in Victorian society were more than accessories. They were barriers, boundaries, symbols of the divide between your private self and the public world. Removing them prematurely could be read as eagerness, intimacy, or a lack of proper restraint. In mixed company, any setting where men were present, gloves were to remain firmly in place. You might adjust them, you might smooth them at the wrist, but you did not peel them off unless you were seated at a table and preparing to eat. And even then, the process had to be discreet. Some etiquette guides recommended slipping gloves off under the cover of a napkin or beneath the table's edge so that no one would witness the transformation from gloved to bare. The moment of exposure was considered almost indecent. Your hands, after all, were intimate. They were what you used to touch, to write private letters, to hold the hands of loved ones. A bare hand in public was vulnerability on display. The shopkeeper herself approaches now. She's wearing gloves too, of course. Thin cotton ones, practical for handling fabric. She gestures toward a chair, inviting you to sit while she retrieves your order. You settle onto the edge of the seat, back straight, ankles crossed, and finally, discreetly, you begin to unbutton your right glove, one tiny button at a time. Each one carved from bone, no larger than a pea. It takes nearly a minute to remove a single glove properly, and you have two. By the time both gloves rest in your lap, your hands feel strangely naked. The air touches your skin directly, and it's both relief and exposure. You flex your fingers slightly, feeling the blood return to your fingertips. But you keep your hands folded in your lap, hidden beneath the gloves you've just removed. Even now, even bare, they're supposed to stay demure. The shopkeeper returns with your completed dress. She drapes it across a side table, and you reach out to touch the fabric. Your bare fingers brush the silk, and the sensation is startling in its directness. No barrier, no layer, just your skin against the world. This is what gloves prevent, this immediate, unfiltered contact. And Victorian society found that dangerous, because if a woman could touch fabric with bare hands, she might also touch other things. Hands, arms, faces. The slope from bare hands to bare affection was apparently very steep. You examine the dress carefully. The stitching is impeccable. The hem falls exactly where it should, long enough to conceal your boots, short enough not to drag. You nod your approval. The shopkeeper smiles. "Shall I wrap it for you, miss?" "Please," you reply softly. As she folds the garment in tissue paper, you begin the slow process of re-gloving. Right hand first, each button fastened carefully. Then the left. By the time she hands you the wrapped package, you're once again fully armored. You thank her and step back onto the street. The afternoon is progressing. You have one more errand before returning home. Afternoon tea at your aunt's house. And that's where the rules become even stranger. Because it's not just how you move or speak or dress, it's also what you eat and how you eat it. Some foods, you'll discover, are simply too dangerous for a respectable woman to consume in public. Chapter 5. Forbidden Fruit, the Banana Scandal, and Other Edible Dangers. Your aunt's parlor is warm and bright. Afternoon sunlight filters through lace curtains, casting delicate patterns on the carpet. The tea table is already set. Porcelain cups, silver forks, tiny sandwiches arranged on tiered stands. And fruit. A platter of fresh fruit. You recognize pears, apples sliced into neat wedges, and berries in a crystal bowl. But there, at the center of the platter, sits a banana.
You feel a small flutter of dread, because bananas, in Victorian society, had developed a reputation. Not an official one, no etiquette manual explicitly banned them, but every woman in this room knows bananas are dangerous. Your aunt notices your gaze. She smiles knowingly. "Imported just this week," she says lightly, "though I suspect most of us will prefer the pears." The other guests murmur in agreement. Everyone understands what isn't being said. Eating a banana requires you to peel it, to hold its soft, curved form in your hand, to bite into it, carefully, while maintaining eye contact with the other guests. The shape is suggestive. The texture is suggestive. The entire act of consumption is suggestive. In some social circles, women avoided bananas altogether in mixed company. The fruit had become symbolically loaded, its very presence a test of propriety. You reach for a pear wedge instead. Safe, manageable, already sliced and ready for a fork. But across the table, a younger woman, a visitor, perhaps not yet fully versed in these unspoken rules, reaches for the banana. The room doesn't gasp. That would be too
dramatic. But you feel the shift, a slight stiffening in posture, a pause in conversation. She peels it slowly, carefully, trying to be delicate. But there's no delicate way to eat a banana. She takes the smallest bite imaginable, chewing quickly, her face flushing. Your aunt shifts the conversation smoothly to the weather. Everyone follows her lead, pretending not to notice. But the moment has been noted, recorded, filed away. And you suspect this young woman won't be invited back next week. Because it's not just bananas. Peaches were considered almost as scandalous. Too soft, too juicy, requiring too much direct mouth contact. Some hostesses refused to serve them with the skin on, insisting they be peeled and sliced in the kitchen first. Figs, mangoes, any fruit that required licking or sucking, these were suspect. Even strawberries could be risky if they were too large to eat in one bite. The solution, for many women, was simply to avoid fruit entirely at social gatherings. Stick to cakes, dry biscuits, things that could be consumed in neat, controlled portions. No dripping, no mess. No gestures that might remind observers that you had a mouth capable of hunger. Your aunt passes you a plate of tea sandwiches, cucumber thinly sliced, bread with the crusts removed. You take one delicately, holding it between your thumb and forefinger. One small bite. Chew slowly. Dab your lips with the napkin. Eating, in this world, is a performance, and the goal is to appear as though you barely eat at all. Some etiquette books advised women to eat very little in public, saving their real meals for private moments. A lady who ate with visible appetite was considered unrefined. Hunger, like so many other human needs, was supposed to be invisible. You sip your tea. The cup is delicate, almost weightless. You hold it by the handle, your pinky finger relaxed, not extended, as some people believe. Extending your pinky was actually considered affected, a marker of someone trying too hard to appear refined. The conversation drifts around you. Someone mentions a mutual acquaintance's upcoming wedding. Someone else praises the new curtains. You nod and smile at appropriate intervals, adding soft murmurs of agreement. But your mind wanders slightly. You think about the banana, still sitting untouched on the platter. And you think about how strange it is that a piece of fruit can carry so much weight. Later, when you're home alone, you'll eat an apple without worrying about the crunch. You'll bite into it freely, juice on your chin, no one watching. But here, now, you take another cucumber sandwich and pretend you've never been hungry in your life. Tea concludes after precisely 45 minutes. Any shorter would seem rushed. Any longer would overstay propriety. You gather your things, thank your aunt graciously, and prepare to leave. But before you can stand, you remember. You've been sitting for nearly an hour, and now you must rise without revealing just how much your posture has cost you. Chapter 6.
the sitting siege, posture as proof of character. You've been perched on the edge of your chair for 45 minutes. Your back hasn't touched the backrest once. Your ankles are crossed, tucked slightly to the side. Your hands rest folded in your lap, and every muscle in your spine is screaming. But you don't let it show. Because in Victorian society, how you sit reveals who you are, or rather, who you're pretending to be. A lady never slouches, never leans, never sprawls. Her spine is a vertical line held in place by corset and willpower. Some etiquette manuals of the era described proper sitting posture in almost military terms. Shoulders back, chin level, core engaged. Your body must appear both present and controlled, comfortable without ever seeming relaxed. You rise smoothly, using your core strength rather than pushing off the armrests. Pushing suggests effort, and effort suggests struggle. A lady must rise as though she's weightless, as though gravity itself defers to her dignity. Once standing, you smooth your skirts, a necessary gesture since sitting has compressed the fabric. But even this has rules. You smooth from the hips downward, gently, without lifting the hem or revealing the motion of your hands too obviously. Your aunt walks you to the door, and on the way, you pass a low side table. A book has fallen to the floor. Your instinct is to pick it up, but you pause, because bending down requires strategy. You cannot simply crouch. That would involve spreading your knees, lowering your center of gravity in a way that's considered unladylike. Squatting, in particular, was seen as something working-class women did. Washerwomen, servants, farmhands. A lady does not squat. So instead, you execute what you've been taught, the inclined retrieval. You place one foot slightly behind the other, keep your knees pressed together, and bend at the waist. Your back stays straight, your skirts stay down. You reach for the book with your fingertips, grasp it delicately, and rise again smoothly. The entire motion takes 5 seconds and requires more core strength than most people realize. Your aunt thanks you, and you smile as though it were nothing. But inside, your muscles ache. You think about men, your brother, your father, every gentleman you've ever observed. They sit however they like, legs spread, elbows on tables, leaning back in chairs. They bend at the knee to pick things up, crouching easily, naturally. No one ever told them their posture was a moral statement. But for you, every position your body assumes is interpreted, analyzed, judged. Sit too comfortably, and you're lazy. Spread your knees even slightly, and you're improper. Cross your legs at the knee rather than the ankle, and you're brazenly modern, possibly even rebellious. You've heard stories. One woman, visiting from America where customs were apparently more relaxed, crossed her legs
at the knee during a London tea party. The hostess had pretended not to notice, but the guest was never invited again. Her posture had marked her as other, as someone who didn't understand the rules. And in this world, not understanding the rules is almost as bad as deliberately breaking them. You exit your aunt's house and step back onto the street. The afternoon is cooling. Shadows stretch long across the cobblestones. You need to stop by the stationer's before it closes, and then home for supper. But first, another walk, another performance. Your spine straightens instinctively. Your shoulders roll back. The posture is so ingrained now that you barely notice you're doing it, except when you're alone at night, in your bedroom, door locked. That's when you finally let yourself collapse. You lie flat on the floor, legs sprawled, arms out, spine released from its daily tyranny. And for a few stolen minutes, your body remembers what it feels like to exist without apology. But that's hours away. Right now, you have an errand to run. And when you arrive at the stationer's, you'll face yet another choice. Which paper to buy for the thank you letter you owe. Because even your stationery can betray you. Chapter 7. Conversation Contraband. The topics you must never touch. You arrive home just as the dinner bell rings. The dining room is already set. Candles flicker in their silver holders. Your father sits at the head of the table, your brother to his right. You and your mother sit opposite them, forming a careful symmetry. The soup course arrives first. You lift your spoon slowly, tilting it away from you as you sip. No slurping, no scraping the bowl. Your movements are nearly silent. Conversation begins naturally, as it always does. Your father mentions something he read in the newspaper, a political scandal, a new railway line being proposed. Your brother jumps in with an opinion, then another. They debate enthusiastically, voices rising slightly in passion, but not anger. You listen, because that's what you do. Women listen. Men discuss. The topics swirling around the table are vast. Industry, science, philosophy, the future of the empire. You know things about all of these subjects. You've read books your father leaves in the library. You've overheard your brother's university friends debating late into the night. You have opinions, questions, ideas, but voicing them here would be a mistake. In Victorian society, women were expected to confine their conversation to specific, acceptable topics. The weather, fashion, domestic matters, perhaps a bit of light literature, though nothing too intellectual. Politics, science, theology, economics, these were men's domains. A woman who ventured into them risked being labeled opinionated, and opinionated was one step away from unmarriageable. Your father asks your mother about the household accounts. She answers briefly, precisely, offering numbers without elaboration. He nods, satisfied, and returns to his debate with your brother. You think about a girl you knew, Clara, daughter of a solicitor. She'd been invited to dinner at a magistrate's home. During the meal, a gentleman misquoted Aristotle, getting the philosopher's stance entirely backward. Clara, who'd actually read the text, gently corrected him. She even apologized as she did it, framing it as a question rather than a correction. But it didn't matter. The table had gone quiet. The gentleman had looked affronted. And Clara was never invited back. Word spread quietly but efficiently. She was too clever, too bold, too willing to embarrass men. Her dance card emptied within a month. So you've learned. You've learned to nod when men speak, even when they're wrong. You've learned to phrase any contribution as a question, never a statement. I wonder if, rather than I think. Might it be possible, rather than it is? Your language has become a series of soft apologies, hedging every thought in layers of deference. Your brother mentions Darwin's latest work, speaking with confidence, though you know he's only read summaries. You could add context. You've read Darwin's entire book, twice. But instead, you murmur, "How fascinating," and take another sip of water. Your mother catches your eye briefly. There's understanding there. She knows. She's been playing this game far longer than you. Later, after the men retire to the study for brandy and cigars, you and your mother move to the drawing room. Finally, you can speak more freely. But even here, the topics remain carefully bounded. You discuss the new vicar's wife, the quality of this season's apples, your cousin's upcoming visit. Nothing too heavy, nothing that might tax the delicate feminine mind. Because even among women, there's an understanding. We perform for each other too. To speak too passionately about serious matters might mark you as strange. To express anger, even justified anger, might make you seem uncontrolled. So you keep your voice level, your thoughts contained. You embroider while you talk, your hands occupied with acceptable busyness. And you think about all the things you'd like to say. About the book you're reading in secret, a treatise on naturalism that your brother discarded. About the questions you have regarding the new factory laws and whether they go far enough. About your suspicion that the world is changing faster than anyone wants to admit. But these thoughts stay interior, filed away in the same mental drawer where you keep your discomfort, your hunger, your exhaustion. Later, alone in your room, you'll write them down. Not in a journal, that might be read, but on loose sheets of paper that you'll burn in the morning. Just to get the words out, just to prove to yourself that they existed.
For now, you set down your embroidery and excuse yourself to prepare for bed. Tomorrow is another performance, and you'll need to be rested.
Chapter 8. The Controlled Laugh. How Joy Became a Performance. 3 days later, you're at a garden party. The weather has cooperated, clear skies, mild temperature, just enough breeze to make parasols useful. You stand in a circle of women near the rose arbor, teacup in hand. Someone tells a story about her niece's unfortunate encounter with a muddy dog. It's genuinely funny. The details are absurd, the timing perfect. You feel laughter rising in your chest, but you don't let it out. Instead, you smile. You tilt your head slightly, and you produce a soft, musical sound, something between a giggle and a sigh. Your hand rises instinctively to cover your mouth, though you've barely made a sound. This is the correct response. Because in Victorian society, laughter was gendered. Men could laugh loudly, heads thrown back, voices booming across rooms. Their laughter was seen as hearty, natural, a sign of good humor and vitality. But a woman's laugh had to be controlled, restrained, barely audible. Too loud and you were unrefined. Too long and you were hysterical. Too genuine and you were revealing something dangerous, the fact that you could lose control. Etiquette guides from the period often included sections on appropriate laughter. Some advised women to laugh behind a fan or into a handkerchief. Others suggested that the ideal laugh should sound like gentle music, pleasant, decorative, non-disruptive. One manual described the proper laugh as a soft ripple, never a wave. You think about your brother again. Last week at dinner, he laughed so hard at his own joke that he choked on his wine. Everyone found it charming, endearing even. If you did the same, you'd be mortifying. The story concludes, and the circle of women produces a collective murmur of amusement, soft, contained, perfectly synchronized in its restraint. But across the garden you hear male laughter, loud, unguarded, free. The contrast is stark. You wonder what it would feel like to laugh like that. To let sound erupt from your chest without measuring it first, to throw your head back and let joy be visible, audible, unashamed. But you already know what would happen. You'd be stared at, whispered about. Someone would mention it to your mother, and you'd be gently reminded that ladies don't make spectacles of themselves. There's a story you heard once, passed around in hushed tones. A young woman at a ball had laughed too loudly at something a gentleman said. Not at anything improper, just a witty observation about the orchestra. But her laugh had been full-throated, genuine. And the gentleman, embarrassed by the attention her laughter drew, had stepped away. Later he told others she'd been too forward. Her reputation suffered, not ruined exactly, but dimmed, and all because she'd forgotten to modulate her joy. So you've learned, as all women do, you've learned to catch laughter before it fully forms, to redirect it into smiles, soft chuckles, polite acknowledgments. Your face has become a careful arrangement of acceptable expressions. Mild amusement is fine, gentle pleasure is fine, but unbridled joy? That's dangerous. Someone tells another story, and this time you're ready. Your smile is pleasant. Your eyes crinkle just slightly. You produce the expected sound, a brief, musical exhalation, and you move on quickly, shifting the conversation before anyone can dwell too long on your reaction. This is the dance. Every interaction is choreographed, and you've memorized all the steps. Later, at home, you'll laugh differently. In your room, door closed, you'll remember something funny and let yourself giggle freely. Not loud enough for anyone to hear, but real, unperformed, unguarded. And in those brief moments, your laughter is entirely your own. But for now, in the garden, surrounded by watchful eyes, you keep your joy tightly laced, just like your corset, just like everything else. Chapter 9. The Age Trap. Questions you cannot ask or answer. A week passes. You're at a gathering, more formal this time, in the drawing room of a family friend. An elderly aunt you haven't seen in years approaches you. She peers at your face, smiling warmly.
My dear, you've grown so much. You must be, what, 20 now? You feel the trap closing. Because age in Victorian society is a complicated subject. For women, it's constantly asked, but never supposed to be fully acknowledged. You smile politely. Nearly, you say, keeping your answer vague. She nods, satisfied with the non-answer. Because here's the strange reality. Everyone wants to know your age, but admitting it directly is considered indelicate. Age determines everything for a woman. Your marriageability, your social value, your place in the hierarchy of respectability. Too young, and you're not yet out in society. A girl, not a woman. Too old, and you're a spinster, fading into irrelevance with each passing season. The ideal age is a narrow window, roughly 18 to 25. Before 18, you're unformed. After 25, you're wilting. Your value, it seems, has an expiration date. And yet, you're not supposed to dwell on this. You're supposed to be mysteriously ageless, youthful enough to be desirable, mature enough to be marriageable, but never openly counting the years. Men, of course, face no such scrutiny. Your father is 52, and no one questions his continued relevance. Your brother is 26, and he's considered to be in his prime. Men age into authority. Women age into obscurity. You think about a cousin, Aunt Margaret, who never married. She's 38 now, and the family speaks of her in hushed, pitying tones. Poor Margaret, they say, as though her unmarried state were a terminal illness. But Margaret seems content. She reads extensively, travels with friends, manages her own small income. Yet society has written her off. Because Anne,
Unmarried woman past 30, is, in Victorian eyes, a failure. Not of her own making, perhaps, but a failure nonetheless. The aunt before you is still talking, asking about your prospects. This is code. She wants to know if you're engaged yet, or close to it. You deflect gracefully. There's time yet, you say, as though time were abundant rather than actively draining away. She pats your hand. Of course, dear. You're still so young. But her eyes betray her real thoughts. You're already 23. The clock is ticking. Later, a gentleman, probably in his 40s, asks your father's permission to speak with you. Permission's granted, he approaches. The conversation is polite, surface level. He mentions his estate, his late wife, his children. He's assessing you. You can feel it. And then, delicately, he asks, "Might I inquire, are you perhaps 20? You recognize the tactic. He's lowballing, hoping you'll correct him upward and reveal your real age. I'm flattered by the guess, you reply, sidestepping neatly. He smiles, but there's frustration behind it. Your age matters to him. It determines your fertility, your malleability, your remaining freshness. But you've given him nothing. The conversation ends politely, and he moves on. You suspect he'll ask your father directly later. Because men are allowed to inquire about women's ages through proper channels. Women, meanwhile, are expected to remain coy, mysterious, youthful without claiming youth. It's exhausting. The constant monitoring of time, the awareness that each birthday brings you closer to irrelevance. You're 23, and already you feel the pressure. 2 more years, and you'll be 25. The invisible line after which people start calling you phrases like, still unwed, with a certain tone. 5 more years, and you'll be 28. Officially a spinster in many circles. The urgency is unspoken, but omnipresent. You must marry, and you must marry soon. Not for love necessarily, though that would be nice, but for security, for purpose, for social validation. Because an unmarried woman is a woman incomplete, or so you've been told, over and over, in 1,000 subtle ways. You glance around the room. Young women your age are clustered together, smiling, performing ease. But beneath the surface, you all feel it. The race against time. And the strange cruelty of a world that values you less with each passing year, while expecting you to pretend you haven't noticed.
You finish your tea and prepare to leave. The evening is ending, and departure has its own complex etiquette. You can't leave too early, you can't leave too late, and you certainly can't leave alone. Chapter 10. The Departure Dance. Leaving without causing offense. The clock chimes 9. You've been at this gathering for 2.5 hours. That's the acceptable window, long enough to show respect, short enough to avoid overstaying. But you can't simply stand
And announce your departure. That would be abrupt, rude. Instead, you must wait for the right moment. You catch your mother's eye across the room. She's been your chaperone tonight, as always. You tilt your head slightly, a silent signal. She nods, understanding. Now you must wait for a natural lull in conversation. Leaving in the middle of someone's story would suggest you found them boring. Leaving during a lively debate would imply you disapprove of the topic. You must exit when the energy is neutral, engaged but not piqued. Finally, the moment arrives. A conversation concludes naturally. A brief pause settles over the room. Your mother stands gracefully. You follow her lead. "I'm afraid we must take our leave," she says to the hostess, her tone warm but firm. The hostess nods, expected this. Now comes the goodbye circuit. You must bid farewell to specific people in a specific order. First, the hostess and host. They receive your deepest gratitude and the promise of a follow-up note. Then any elderly relatives or guests of honor. Then peers, acquaintances, casual attendees. You cannot skip anyone, but you also cannot linger too long with any one person. Each goodbye must be warm but brief. "Thank you so much. What a lovely evening. I do hope we'll see you again soon." The phrases are formulaic, but they must sound genuine. You're halfway through the circuit when you realize someone is watching you leave. A gentleman you were introduced to earlier. He's standing near the doorway, clearly hoping to speak with you before you go. But you're with your mother, and your mother is your guardian. He cannot approach unless she permits it. He catches your eye. You offer a polite smile and a slight nod, acknowledgement but not invitation. He seems to understand. If he wanted to speak further, he should have done so earlier in the evening. Attempting to delay your departure would be seen as forward. You reach the door finally, gloves already rebuttoned, hat secured. The hostess bids you a final farewell. "Safe journey home," she says. "Thank you," you reply. "And thank you again for your hospitality." Outside, the night air is cool. Your family's carriage is waiting. A footman helps you inside, and you settle onto the cushioned seat. Your mother sits across from you. For a moment, neither of you speaks. Then she says, "You handled yourself well tonight." It's rare praise. You feel a flicker of pride. "Thank you," you murmur. She adjusts her shawl. "If they did notice you laughing rather loudly at one point." The pride evaporates. You'd thought you'd been careful. Apparently not careful enough. "I'll be more mindful," you say quietly. She nods, satisfied. The carriage rolls through dark streets. You stare out the window, watching gas lights flicker past. You think about the evening, the conversations navigated, the silences maintained, the departures executed flawlessly. Every moment was a performance. And even when you thought you'd done well, there was still a note to improve upon. By the time you arrive home, you're exhausted. Not from physical exertion, but from the constant vigilance required to exist in public. You climb the stairs slowly, each step a small relief. Soon you'll be in your room. Soon you'll be able to shed the layers, the dress, the corset, the persona. But first, there's one more task. You must write a thank you note to the hostess. And even that has rules. Chapter 11. The Letter Laws. How ink and paper could betray you. You sit at your writing desk. The lamp is lit low. The house is quiet. Before you, a stack of writing paper, a selection of pens, an inkwell. This should be simple. A brief note thanking your hostess for a lovely evening. But even this small task is governed by rules. You reach for the paper first. It's cream-colored, high quality, but not ostentatiously expensive. The texture is smooth, the edges cleanly cut. Good, because in Victorian society, your choice of stationery spoke volumes. Paper that was too ornate suggested vanity. Too cheap suggested financial strain. Too colorful suggested frivolity, or worse, a theatrical personality. White or cream were the only truly acceptable colors for respectable correspondence. Some women used pale blue or lavender paper, but even that carried risk. Blue was sometimes associated with blue stockings, intellectual women, which was not always a compliment. Lavender could suggest mourning, or alternatively, a romantic disposition. Both could be misread. So you've learned to stick with cream, neutral, safe, unimpeachable. Now, the ink. You have 3 bottles in your desk drawer: black, brown, and, hidden in the back, violet. The violet ink was a gift from a cousin who lives in Paris. You've never used it, because colored ink, especially for women, was considered bold. In some circles, violet ink was associated with actresses, artists, women who lived unconventional lives. A respectable woman used black or brown, nothing more. You uncork the black ink and dip your pen. The nib scratches softly against paper as you begin. Dear Mrs. Hartwell, thank you so much for your gracious hospitality this evening. The company was most delightful, and I found the evening both pleasant and enriching. With warmest regards. You pause before signing your name. The handwriting must be neat but not overly decorative. Excessive flourishes suggested attention-seeking. Too plain suggested lack of education. You've practiced your signature until it strikes the perfect balance. Legible, elegant, modest. You sign, then set the letter aside to dry. While you wait, you think about the letters you can't send, the ones you write in your head. Letters to authors whose books moved you. Letters to newspapers about injustices you've witnessed. Letters to friends expressing opinions too bold for polite correspondence. Those letters stay imaginary, because a woman's written words were subject to the same
scrutiny as her spoken ones. Perhaps even more, since letters could be saved, shared, reread. You've heard of women whose letters were intercepted by disapproving family members, engagements broken because a woman's letter revealed too much personality, too much passion. One poor girl wrote to a suitor about her love of astronomy, a genuine interest she thought he'd appreciate. He showed the letter to his mother, who declared the girl unnaturally curious. The engagement was quietly dissolved. So women learned to write in code. Feelings were pleasant or agreeable, never intense. Opinions were wondered about, never stated. Even affection had to be carefully rationed on the page. Too effusive, and you seemed desperate. Too restrained, and you seemed cold. The balance was impossibly narrow. You fold your letter to Mrs. Hartwell using the proper technique. Thirds, never quarters, smooth edges, no wrinkles. The wax seal comes next. You melt a stick of plain ivory wax over the candle flame. Red wax exists in your drawer, but you'd never use it. Red was for urgent business correspondence, or, scandalously, for love letters. A woman using red wax was making a statement, and statements were dangerous. The ivory wax drips onto the fold. You press your family's seal into it firmly. The impression is clean. Tomorrow you'll have this delivered by hand, not through the post. That would be impersonal for such a short distance. A servant will carry it directly to Mrs. Hartwell's door, and she'll receive it, read it, and judge it. The words, yes, but also the paper quality, the handwriting, the wax color, the timing of its arrival. Every detail is a message. You extinguish the candle and prepare for bed. Tomorrow brings another social obligation, a visiting call, and that will require its own careful preparation. Chapter 12. Visiting Hours. The Timed Ritual of Social Survival. The following afternoon, you prepare for a visiting call. Not to be confused with a social call or a morning call, which happens in the afternoon,
or a formal call. Each has different rules. Today's visit is semi-formal. You're calling on a family friend to whom you owe a return visit from 3 weeks ago. You cannot delay any longer without seeming rude. Your maid helps you into your visiting dress, a day dress, but your nicest one. Not as elaborate as an evening gown, but more formal than what you'd wear at home. The trim is fresh, the buttons polished. You check the clock. 2:30. Perfect. Visiting hours typically ran from 3 to 5 in the afternoon. Arriving earlier suggested you had nothing better to do, a sign of social desperation. Arriving later risked catching the household during dinner preparations. You gather your calling cards. These small rectangles of cardstock are essential. Your name is printed in simple, elegant type. No flourishes, no decoration, just your name. Some cards have a corner turned down. This
indicates different messages depending on which corner. Upper right, congratulations. Upper left, condolence. Lower right, farewell. Lower left, you came in person, but the recipient wasn't home. It's a coded system, understood by anyone who moves in polite society. You tuck 3 cards into your small reticule, along with a handkerchief and a few coins. At precisely 3 o'clock, you step into the carriage. The ride is short. You arrive at the house at 3:15. The servant admits you and asks you to wait in the entrance hall. This is the moment of uncertainty. The lady of the house might be at home, meaning she's receiving visitors, or she might be not at home, meaning she's either genuinely absent or simply not receiving today. Both are acceptable. Neither is an insult. But you won't know until the servant returns. You wait, hands folded, posture perfect. After 2 minutes, the servant reappears. Mrs. Daventry is at home and will receive you. Relief. You're led into the drawing room. Mrs. Daventry rises to greet you, a good sign. It means she's pleased to see you. You exchange pleasantries. She gestures to a chair. Now, the clock starts. A proper visit lasts between 15 and 20 minutes. Any shorter suggests you're only visiting out of obligation. Any longer suggests you're overstaying, imposing on her time. You must time this perfectly, without appearing to watch the clock. The conversation flows politely. You ask about her children. She asks about your mother. You compliment the new wallpaper. She mentions an upcoming charity event. Everything is pleasant, surface level, carefully neutral. You're performing interest without being intrusive. She's performing hospitality without committing to deeper friendship. This is the dance. 15 minutes pass. You begin preparing your exit. You don't stand abruptly. That would be jarring. Instead, you subtly shift your posture, a small signal that you're aware of the time. She notices. She's been trained to notice. She says, "It's been so lovely to see you." This is your cue. "And you as well," you reply, gathering your reticule. "Thank you for receiving me." You stand gracefully. She rises too. She walks you to the door. Another good sign. Had she remained seated, it would have indicated the visit was merely tolerable. At the threshold, you pause. "Please give my regards to Mr. Daventry." "I shall. Safe journey home." You step into the carriage. 17 minutes total. Perfect. As the carriage pulls away, you feel the familiar exhaustion. Not from the visit itself, but from the constant calculation. Every word weighed, every gesture measured. You've fulfilled your social obligation successfully, but you've also spent 17 minutes pretending to be a slightly different version of yourself. More formal, more pleasant, more controlled. The real you, the one with complicated thoughts and strong opinions and genuine feelings, stayed carefully hidden, as always. You look
out the window as the carriage turns toward home. But then you remember, you have one more errand. A quick stop at the dressmaker's to collect a repaired hem. You'll be walking the final 2 blocks alone. And that's about to become a problem. Chapter 13. The Unescorted Woman. Why walking alone made you dangerous. The carriage stops 3 blocks from home. You've asked the driver to let you out here because the dressmaker's shop is nearby. You'll walk the rest of the way. It's only 2 blocks. Broad daylight, a safe, familiar neighborhood. But the moment you step onto the pavement alone, you feel it. The weight of visibility. Because in Victorian society, an unescorted woman was automatically suspicious. Respectable women didn't walk alone. They were accompanied by a maid, a family member, a married friend, someone who served as both companion and witness. A chaperone proved you had nothing to hide. Walking alone suggested the opposite. You keep your pace steady, your gaze forward. You pass a constable standing on the corner. He watches you for a moment too long. Not threateningly, just assessingly. You can almost hear his thoughts. Why is she alone? Where is she going? What kind of woman walks unaccompanied? You grip your reticule a bit tighter and continue. Across the street, 2 women pause their conversation to glance at you. One whispers to the other. You don't hear the words, but you know the tone. Judgment. Because a woman alone in public occupied a strange, uncomfortable category. She wasn't quite respectable. She might be running an errand, yes, but she might also be meeting someone. A man, perhaps. A secret rendezvous. Or she might be one of those women, the kind who worked the streets after dark. The logic was cruel but pervasive. Virtuous women were protected, guarded, escorted. Women who walked alone had either lost that protection or rejected it. Either way, they were suspect. You've heard the stories. A cousin's friend, walking home alone after her maid fell ill, was followed by a man who assumed she was available. She'd had to duck into a shop and wait for the shopkeeper's wife to escort her home. The incident was never spoken of directly, but it hung over her reputation for months. Another woman, seen walking alone repeatedly, was rumored to be having an affair. In reality, she was visiting a sick aunt, but the damage was done. You reach the dressmaker's shop and step inside quickly. The relief is immediate. Indoors, you're safe from scrutiny. The shopkeeper greets you warmly, retrieves your mended skirt, wraps it in brown paper. You pay, thank her, and prepare to leave. But now you must walk home. Another 2 blocks. Alone. You consider waiting, hoping another customer might leave at the same time and walk in the same direction. But that would be obvious. Desperate. So you step back outside. The sun is lower now. Shadows stretch longer. You walk quickly, not running, never.
Running, but purposefully. Your eyes stay focused ahead. You don't make eye contact with anyone. A boy selling newspapers calls out headlines. A carriage rattles past, splashing mud dangerously close to your hem. You navigate it all with practiced efficiency. Finally, your street. Your front door. You slip inside and close it firmly behind you. Safe. You set down the wrapped package and exhale. 2 blocks, maybe 5 minutes total. But those 5 minutes alone in public had felt like an exposure, like walking without clothing. Because your reputation in this world is as fragile as fabric. And being seen without an escort is like showing a torn seam, evidence that something isn't quite right. You think about men, as you often do in moments like this. Your brother walks everywhere alone. Your father, too. No one questions it. No one whispers. Their solitude is freedom. Yours is suspicion. You climb the stairs to your room. Tonight, you'll stay in. Tomorrow, if you need to go out, you'll bring your maid. Not because you need help carrying anything, but because you need a witness. Someone to prove that your movements are innocent, your intentions pure. Someone to protect you from the conclusions others might draw. It's not safety you need. It's the appearance of safety. And in Victorian England, appearance is everything. Chapter 14. The hat that holds everything together, and the stockings beneath. The next morning, you stand before your mirror once again.
This time, you're checking one final detail before heading out: your hat. It's a modest thing, dark blue felt, trimmed with a single ribbon. Not too large, not too small, but absolutely essential. Because leaving the house without a hat would be unthinkable. In Victorian society, a bareheaded woman was not simply underdressed. She was practically invisible, or worse, highly visible for all the wrong reasons. Hats marked boundaries. They separated respectable women from servants, from the working class, from women who lived on the margins. A lady wore a hat outdoors, always, even on short walks, even in summer heat. Going bareheaded suggested you couldn't afford a hat, or didn't know better, or didn't care, all of which were damning. You adjust the angle slightly. Too far forward, and it looks childish. Too far back, and it seems careless. The brim should sit just above your eyebrows, angled to frame your face without obscuring it. Your hat pin slides through the crown and into your carefully arranged hair. The pin is both functional and symbolic. It holds the hat in place, but it also marks you as a woman who understands the rules. You step back and assess. Hat, perfect. Gloves, buttoned. Dress, pressed and properly hemmed. But there's one more layer no one will see: your stockings. You glance down, though your skirts completely conceal them. They're pale, cream-colored, made of fine cotton. Not the red ones folded in your drawer, not the ones with
embroidered patterns, because even hidden garments carried moral weight. Stocking colors were supposed to be neutral, modest. White, cream, pale pink, these were acceptable. But bright colors, especially red or scarlet, were associated with performers, actresses, dancers, women whose legs were part of their profession. Even though no one would see your stockings beneath layers of petticoats and skirts, the choice still mattered. You'd heard of women whose colored stockings were glimpsed accidentally, a lifted hem on a windy day, a stumble on stairs. And that single flash of color had been enough to raise eyebrows, inspire whispers. Because if you wore bold stockings in private, what did that say about your private character? The logic was twisted, invasive, but it was also pervasive. So you wear cream stockings. You choose the safe option, even in the hidden layers, because you've learned that nothing is truly private. Not your undergarments, not your thoughts, not even the parts of yourself that exist beneath fabric and performance. Everything can be discovered. Everything can be judged. You take one last look in the mirror. The woman staring back is composed, appropriate, perfectly assembled. She looks like every other respectable woman on every other street in Victorian England. And that's the point: to blend in, to pass inspection, to reveal nothing that might be used against you. You leave your room and descend the stairs. Your mother is in the hallway, also preparing to go out. She glances at you, eyes scanning from hat to hem in one practiced sweep. "You look well," she says. It's approval, hard-won and appreciated. Together, you step outside. The day is bright. The street is busy. You fall into step beside her, your movements synchronized. Two women, properly dressed, properly escorted, properly invisible in their respectability. This is the goal. Not to stand out, not to be noticed, just to exist within the narrow bounds of acceptability. And as you walk, you think about all the layers. The ones made of fabric, chemise, corset, petticoats, skirts. The ones made of rules, posture, pace, gaze, voice. The ones made of silence, thoughts you don't speak, feelings you don't show, desires you don't acknowledge. You're wearing all of them at once, and they're heavy. But you've learned to carry the weight. You've learned to move through the world encased in expectations. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, you wonder what would happen if you shed them all. If you walked bareheaded, wore red stockings, laughed loudly. If you ran across the street without gathering your skirts. If you spoke your mind, asked bold questions, touched the world with bare hands, what would happen? You already know. You'd be free for a moment, and then you'd be ruined. So you keep walking, hat secured, layers intact. One more day in a lifetime of performances. One more perfectly executed role. The Quiet Rebellion. The day ends as it began. You're back in your bedroom. The door is closed. The lamp is low. Outside, the street has gone quiet. You sit on the edge of your bed and begin the slow process of disassembly. Hat first. The pins slide free easily now. Then the gloves. Button by button, they release you. Your dress comes next, with help from your maid. She unlaces the back, and you step out of the heavy wool. The corset is loosened. Your lungs expand fully for the first time in 14 hours. The relief is almost painful. Each layer falls away. Petticoats, crinoline, chemise. Finally, you stand in just your nightgown. Your hair is unpinned. Your feet are bare. You dismiss your maid gently. She leaves, closing the door behind her. And now, finally, you're alone. You stretch. Your arms reach overhead. Your spine lengthens. Your toes spread against the cool floor. Movements that would be unseemly in public feel luxurious in private. You walk to the window and look out at the darkened street. Somewhere out there, other women are doing the same, shedding their armor, breathing deeply, reclaiming their bodies for a few stolen hours. You think about the rules you followed today, the dozens of tiny performances, the constant vigilance, and you think about how strange it is that simply being yourself, moving naturally, speaking freely, laughing genuinely, requires privacy, requires hiding. But this is your world, and these quiet moments are your rebellion. You cross to your desk and pull out a sheet of paper, not cream this time, just plain, and you write. Not a thank you note, not a polite letter, just thoughts, observations, questions that have no answers. You write until your hand aches, and then you fold the pages and tuck them away. Maybe someday, someone will read them. Maybe they'll understand. But for now, they're just for you. You climb into bed. The sheets are cool. The room is quiet. And for the first time all day, you feel like yourself. Not a lady, not a performance, just a person. You close your eyes. Tomorrow will bring new rules, new performances, new layers to navigate. But tonight, you let them all fall away. The corset unlaces. The expectations fade. The rules can wait until morning. For now, you're free. Sleep comes slowly, gently, and in your dreams, you're running. Bareheaded, barefoot, laughing loud enough to echo, and no one is watching. No one is judging. You're just moving through space the way bodies were meant to move, freely, joyfully, unafraid. Rest now. Let the Victorian world fade into shadow. Let your breath deepen. Let your body remember what it feels like to exist without apology. Tomorrow's rules can wait. Tonight, you're entirely your own. Good night.